He was called a cheat, a manipulator, a player who lived in the shadows of the law. Australians despised him. The French accused him of playing an entire World Cup final offside. Opposition fans screamed for him to be sent off every single match. But here's the thing, he never was. Because while the world was screaming cheat, referees were calling him the most disciplined player they'd ever seen. He played 148 test matches, 131 of them, captained his team to back-to-back World Cups, and retired as the most decorated player in rugby history. So how did a farm boy from the middle of nowhere become rugby's most controversial and most successful player of all time? This is the story of Richie McCaw, the Invisible Master. On New Year's Eve 1980, Richard Hugh McCaw was born. And unlike most future sporting legends, he wasn't born into privilege or spotted by scouts at age 5. He was born into MUD sheep stations and the brutal isolation of the Hakataramea Valley in South Canterbury. Richie's great-great-grandfather had immigrated from the Scottish borders in 1893. The McCaw family weren't talkers, they were doers. And young Richie absorbed that DNA like a sponge. But the most profound influence on his life wasn't his parents, it was his grandfather, Jim McCaw. Jim was a World War II Tempest pilot, and when Richie turned 9 years old, Jim started taking him up in gliders. While other kids were playing video games, Richie was learning how to read the invisible. And this skill would become his superpower. But here's the thing about Richie McCaw. He wasn't some prodigy that everyone saw coming. He played for his local club Kurof as a kid, nothing special. When he went to board at Otago Boys High School in 1994, he was just another farm kid trying to make it. By 1998, he'd worked his way up to become head boy and captain of the first 15. The pinnacle of his schoolboy career came when he led Otago Boys High to the National Secondary School's rugby final against Rotorua Boys High School in Christchurch. The match was a brutal, grinding defensive war that ended 5-5. Richie scored his team's only try, showcasing the work rate and support play that would define his career. But then came the moment that changed everything. Despite his performance in the final, Richie failed to make the starting lineup for the New Zealand secondary schools team. The selectors chose Sam Harding, Angus MacDonald and Hale T-Pole instead. Most kids would have given up right there, would have accepted the verdict and moved on with their lives. But not Richie McCaw. This rejection became fuel. He made a calculated decision. He moved north to Christchurch to Lincoln University, placing himself directly in the heart of Canterbury rugby, the most ruthless talent factory in New Zealand. By 1999, Richie was tearing it up in the junior ranks. He won the World Championship with the New Zealand Under-19 in Wales. In 2000, he progressed to the Under-21s and made his debut for Canterbury. But in 2001, something shocking happened. After only 17 matches for Canterbury, All Blacks coach John Mitchell named him in the squad for the end-of-year tour to Ireland, Scotland and Argentina. And the rugby world lost its mind. Josh Kronfeld, a legendary All Black open-side flanker and the very man Richie was replacing, came out with a brutal public attack. He said, "You might as well just give All Black jerseys to everybody." The narrative was clear. McCaw was too young, too inexperienced, and completely unworthy of the black jersey. He was about to be exposed on the international stage, and everyone was waiting for him to fail. November 17th, 2001. Lansdowne Road, Dublin. Hostile crowd, massive pressure, and Richie McCaw's first touch in international rugby? A knock-on. The All Blacks were getting hammered, trailing 16-7 at halftime. But then something shifted in the second half. Richie adjusted his game speed, started reading the breakdown like he was reading thermals in a glider. He was everywhere, absolutely dominating the collision zone. The All Blacks stormed back to win 40-29. Richie McCaw, the 20-year-old who supposedly didn't deserve to be there, was named Man of the Match. He received a standing ovation at the post-match function, a rarity for a visiting player, and he had announced himself as the future of the All Blacks. But more importantly, he'd shown that he thrived when people doubted him, and they were about to doubt him a lot more. To understand why Richie McCaw became the most controversial player in rugby history, you need to understand the breakdown. tests, he had 3 signature moves that drove opposition fans absolutely insane. First, he was constantly accused of entering rucks from the side rather than through the gate. But here's the genius. Richie would arrive at the breakdown before the ruck had technically formed, meaning the gate didn't exist yet. He was accessing the ball from angles that would become illegal milliseconds later. It wasn't cheating, it was time travel. Second, the art of slowing the ball. When he couldn't win a turnover, Richie was a master of buying time. He'd fall on the wrong side of the ruck after making a tackle, and it would look completely accidental. And third, the referee whisperer. Here's where it gets really interesting. Wayne Barnes, one of the world's top referees, addressed the serial cheat allegations in his autobiography, and he called them lazy criticism. He revealed that McCaw hardly spoke to referees during games, but when he did speak, he asked clarifying questions that planted seeds of doubt about the opposition's legality. He didn't bully refs, he manipulated them intellectually. That's not cheating, that's chess. In 2002, during a test in Durban against South Africa, a drunk fan invaded the pitch and attacked referee David McCaw. While security fumbled around, Richie was the first to react. He tackled the intruder and restrained him until order was restored. It was an early sign of his protective instinct toward the game's integrity. In 2004, at just 23 years old, Richie captained the All Blacks for the first time against Wales, leading them to a 26-25 victory. In 2006, following the retirement of Tana Umaga, Richie was named the permanent All Blacks captain. His first year at the helm was spectacular. 11 wins from 12 tests. He won the World Rugby Player of the Year award for the first time and led the Crusaders to another Super Rugby title. The McCaw era had officially begun, but the biggest test of his life was just around the corner. Between 2008 and 2010, the All Blacks were dominant. Richie won the World Rugby Player of the Year award in both 2009 and 2010, becoming the first player to ever win it 3 times. Early in 2011, Richie fractured the 5th metatarsal in his right foot. He had surgery to insert a screw to help the bone heal. But as the World Cup approached, the screw began irritating the bone. X-rays revealed that the screw had actually caused a second fracture. The pain was excruciating. Most players would have withdrawn, but Richie McCaw wasn't most players. He made the decision to play on. The 2011 World Cup final against France was a mirror image of 2007. Tight, nervous, brutal, and then came the eye gouge. French centre Aurélien Rougerie made contact with Richie's eyes in a ruck. Footage showed his eye area red and swollen, and he had to receive medical attention. But Richie refused to complain to the referee or cite the player after the match. When asked, he simply said, "I felt something, but I wasn't sure if it was intentional." Richie led the All Blacks to an 8-7 victory. Richie McCaw became the first All Blacks captain to lift the Webb Ellis Cup since David Kirk in 1987. He had played on one foot, half blind, with the weight of a nation on his shoulders, and he won. In early 2015, Richie announced that it would likely be his final year. In the final against Australia on October 31st, 2015, Richie delivered a clinical performance, and the All Blacks dominated 34-17. Immediately after the tournament, Richie announced his retirement. The final numbers were staggering: 148 test matches, 110 as captain, 131 wins for an 88.5% win rate, 2 World Cups and 27 tries. These aren't just numbers, they're a legacy carved in stone. So was Richie McCaw a cheat or the greatest of all time? To his detractors, he systematically pushed the offside line, sealed off possession and obstructed defenders. Australian fans still claim he played an entire career offside and got away with it. But to experts and peers, Richie didn't break the rules. He adapted to them faster than anyone else in history. As the laws of the breakdown changed annually, he evolved his technique to stay effectively legal. His longevity, his leadership in crises, and his unparalleled win rate make him a statistical anomaly. Wayne Barnes, one of the world's premier referees, put it best: the cheat label was lazy criticism of a player who simply understood the game better than his opponents. Richie McCaw was an invisible cheat, only in that he operated on a plane of understanding that was invisible to those watching and playing against him. He was a farm boy who learned to read the wind, a pilot who learned to stay calm in chaos, a warrior who learned to turn pain into power. To his enemies, he was a cheat. To his teammates, he was a leader. To the record books, he's the greatest rugby player of all time. And that's not an opinion, that's just math. The invisible master, the man who won by living in the shadows. Because sometimes the greatest players aren't the ones you see, they're the ones you feel. Now, if you enjoyed this story of how a controversial farm boy became rugby's most decorated player, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers this year, so please hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate the support, and I know we can do it together. Trust me, we've got more incredible stories coming your way.